So for this project, we're gonna make some koinobori. Koinobori are a Japanese kite that's in the shape of a fish. It's kind of like a windsock. So when you hang it outside, the wind takes it and the fish looks like it's swimming through the air. So this is a symbol of Children's Day in Japan. Children's Day is on May 5th, which is coming up right this week. So on Children's Day, families celebrate their children's unique personalities and the happiness of children. Each family member hangs out a kite of koinobori just for themselves. So moms and dads and grandparents, children, each person hangs out a fish outside their house. So you see these waving all over the towns and villages. So one thing that I want you to consider is keeping your fish. I did this fish all in cool colors. So our cool colors are green, purple, and blue. For this fish, I'm going to keep it to warm colors. So I have pinks and oranges, yellows, reds. Those are all warm colors. The reason why I suggest that is because when we start to paint, if you use a whole bunch of different colors, they could end up being a brown mess when you're done painting. But if you wanted to use a different color scheme, you certainly may. So the first thing that you need to do is you need 2 pieces of paper. So I'm going to get 2 pieces out here. So 2 pieces of paper. And the first thing I'm going to do is draw a fish shape. So I'll put kind of just the general outline on the slide so you can look on the slides to see what shape to make, or maybe you can print it. So this is the general shape that I want. I'm going to leave the flat side over here for the mouth, and then I'm going to do a little curve over here for the tail. And then a slight curve for the belly and a little fin up on top. So I'm going to draw, starting on the side here, I'll draw the top fin, and I'll kind of come around, and then I'm going to make the tail over here. And I'll start over here. I'm going to make the mouth nice and big. I don't want to make them super skinny because once I cut him out, I want to have some good space to paint him. So I'll kind of go up to make that tail again, and then a little bump for the tail. Okay, so that's kind of the hardest part just because it's hard to make that fish shape. But once you do that, you can take both pieces of paper. We don't need to trace it because we can just cut it out at the same time. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut out both pieces of paper at once. So I have 2 fish that are exactly the same size. And if I don't cut perfectly, that's okay. Or if I notice that I made one part a little weird when I was drawing it, I can kind of fix it when I cut. Okay. So there is my fish, and I have 2 because I cut out 2 papers at once. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take, I have a plastic bag here. You could use like a grocery plastic bag too, but I took a plastic Ziploc bag, I opened it up, and I just ripped the corners. You can cut the corners, and I ripped it so that you can open it all the way up, so it's kind of like a placemat for me. So I have right here my fish, and I'm going to start one at a time. I'm going to start by thinking about what I want my fish to look like. So one good thing that you can do also is a little kind of a cheat. Stack them up, and then I'm going to give them eyes first, I think. So for the eyes, I think I might, this is kind of a purple color. It's not really a warm color. Maybe I'll go hot pink for the eyes. So I'm going to do a big circle and a smaller circle inside. And this is going to be my fish eye. I'm going to leave that little white spot that I like to leave. So I'm using permanent markers because we're going to paint in a minute. And if I used regular Crayola markers, like regular washable markers, this would all blend together and it wouldn't show up once I finish painting. If you don't have colored Sharpies, you can just use a plain black permanent marker to do all these details, and that works just fine. So now that I have this eye done, what actually happens when you're using permanent markers is it goes through to the other side. So now what I can do is just flip over this fish, and I can kind of see where that eye was. Didn't go through as much as it does sometimes, but I'm going to give this fish the same eye. It's just going to be opposite of the first guy. Okay. And then the next thing I could do is add a fin maybe. And I'll do that on both. I could add some lines for the fins up top. I could add some lines on the tail. So now I have two fish that are looking pretty similar, and then maybe one more thing I'll add is some scales. And maybe I'll give him a big smile. Oops. Some scales over here. Just kind of a C shape for some scales. Okay, so now I have two fish and they're pretty much the same looking. So the next step is we need to add lots of color to these fish. So you can see my fish right here. I did the same thing. I did the eye, I did kind of lines here, some gills, some fins, some scales, some lines. But then I painted both sides. I painted this, I've started to staple this together. So there's both my fish, and I'll show you that in a minute. But we want to paint these. So before I paint them, because just to do something a little different, if you have a spray bottle, this works perfectly. With a spray bottle, you can I have a bowl of water right here. So if you have a spray bottle, you can kind of spray the fish. But another way that you can do this is just quick, dunk them in. So this is where you need the permanent marker. If we had used regular Crayola markers, this would have made the ink run everywhere. So I'm just gonna dunk them in and lay him on my plastic bag. Make sure he's nice and damp. I'll do that on both fish. Send them swimming. Okay, so now both fish are nice and wet. And just be careful with them. Once you get the paper wet and you put it down, leave it alone. Don't try to pick it up and move it around because you'll tear your fish. I actually did that with my other fish. I accidentally tore him. But tape to the rescue, we saved him. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some watercolors. I've been using this water a lot today, so it's kind of dirty looking, but it's still clean enough I can use it. So I'm going to use my warm colors, red, orange, yellow. I can use these colors down here. And I'm just going to start to paint. And you can see that because I have wet paper, the paint just kind of runs nicely together. And it stays nice and bright and light. It's not too dark. It doesn't cover the fish up too much. I'm going to go around his eye and try to leave his eye white. Maybe I'll try this color down here. See how the colors kind of run together? They kind of move around on their own, which I think is really cool. Okay, so you need to do this to both fish and then let them dry. So both of these need to be painted and just let them dry. Once they're dry, and like really dry, I'm going to show you what happened to mine. So this guy, I started to pull him off the plastic when he was still wet, and he actually got a big rip right here. So I just put some tape on there. So he's good, but keep them on the plastic till they're dry. So now what we're going to do is we're going to turn this guy into a kite. So all I've done so far is staple some staples. You can see just a few staples right along the bottom edge. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a couple around the tail. So now what we're going to do, I just have some plastic, like grocery store bags, and I'm actually going to rip this into a couple more pieces, just so I have some small pieces I can use. So I'm going to kind of crumple it up, but not like a tiny little ball, because I'm trying to make this fish puffy, like he's full of wind. So I'm gonna crumple it up, and I'm actually gonna try to stick some down into the tail. It's kind of like stuffing a stuffed animal. If you've ever been to Build-A-Bear, it's kind of like stuffing a Build-A-Bear. So I have a little bit of stuffing down there. So now I'm just gonna take a staple right here, and right here, and kind of keep going along. So I'm just making sure the front and the back line up as I go, and then the front needs a little bit more, so I'll crumple this up a little more, put that in. I think he's puffy enough. If you wanted to add more, you can make them really puffy. And I'll just go right around, and then I have a piece of string. So my little piece of string is where I can tie my fish outside, if you wanted to hang this outside to let them blow around and see if you have a nice windy day. So I'm just going to staple that string right inside his mouth. And now I have a Koinobori, just like that. Have fun making these, guys.